Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Taproom Success Show. I'm Andrew Copeland, joined by my buddy Carrie Shumway. Carrie, is it finally starting to almost feel like spring up in New Hampshire? I know we're not quite there, but we're recording in early March right now. And what's it like, boots on the ground, New Hampshire right now?
Spring is nowhere to be found. We're getting more snow this afternoon. It's cold. Nah, it's we're not quite there, but it's coming. I think next week we'll start to get the thaw and then my basement will flood and then
Oh
we'll
my
get the
gosh.
so I live in New England and I love it. However, there are times when it's nice to escape, but
I'll take snow a couple times a year when it's nice and pretty. I can go play on it when my son has a snow day. Besides that, I'll go visit you when I want snow.
we want you to come visit. Love to have you guys up here.
Well, speaking of up north, you recently went to the Vermont Brewers Conference and were on a panel that covered advisory boards. Talk to me a little bit about, first off, kind of what is an advisory board? Why are we having them? Then we'll dive into like what you learned and some more things. But
Yeah.
talk to us about how that panel came to be.
Well, it's funny because I had been thinking about this concept, and I think you and I and some other colleagues had talked about this sort of generally high level. Because I think, as small business owners, breweries, taproom owners, it can feel kind of lonely. Like you got to make all the decisions, and geez, I hope they're right. And, you'll ask for guidance here and there, but there's no formal structure. And that's really what an advisory panel or an advisory board is. And this sort of the genesis, I think, was from Sean Lawson from Lawson's Finest Liquids. He
Hmm.
was on the panel along with Ralph Crowley from Polar Beverages. So very two very, you got sort of small business, big business, but they both kind of share the same concepts, which is, how do you pull together a team, a panel, a group of people that can help you kind of guide your business strategically or even more tactically? And it's hard to do it alone. So it was really just kind of listening to their stories and how they did it and kind of the benefits that they got from it. And then kind of melding that with my own ideas of my past experiences of trying to do something similar. We didn't quite call it that, but how do you really assemble a team to help you run your business better? So that's kind of the genesis of it.
I mean, I love the concept. I love surrounding myself with smarter people with skills that I don't have. So I 100% get that. So the panel you had on there, like, who else was on it? Like, what did you learn? And like, why is it valuable for people listening today?
Yeah, so our panel was, Sean Lawson, Lawson's Finest Liquids, Ralph Crowley, president of Polar Beverages, and Julie Rhodes from Not Your Hobby Marketing. And we all kind of talked about, how either we've had experience with this or we've worked with clients that have had it. And like, who should be on this panel? Like, if you think about your advisory panel and you're building it, like, what type of skill sets are you looking for? How do you assemble such a thing? And it's going to be kind of a personal question. I think you need to look at your current roster of strengths, weaknesses, gaps, skill sets, what you have, what you don't have. Because I think a lot of people just intuitively know, yeah, I'm good at this, but not so good at that. A lot of people come to me because they're like, I really love to brew beer. I really enjoy the marketing side, but the finance side, I just don't. So I can help kind of fill that gap for folks. But that's the exercise that you'd want to start with. Um, but generally speaking, you're looking at someone in the finance side, maybe sales, marketing, operations, legal, and you don't even necessarily need to pay these people. I think that's maybe a misconception too, is like, sure, if you have the budget for it and whatnot, but a lot of times it's really just who do we want on the roster and let's assemble these folks. Everybody gets, complimentary beer and swag.
Yeah, I was going to play devil's advocate. Why are they going to do this out of the goodness of their heart, Carrie?
Yeah, they're not. I mean, but I think one of the benefits of running a tap room is that most people love it. They love to be in your tap room. And if you say, hey, you know what? And you can assemble a package that's reasonable, and I think it's going to be different for different people because there could be expectations like, well, no, I only do it if it's a paid thing, or no, geez, I love what you guys are doing. I live in the area. I want to support you. I think you'll find more people in that category. Um, and if the lift is relatively light, and we're not asking you to come in like for long meetings every week, this is like a quarterly thing, maybe once a year offsite. But yeah, look to the for maybe some free food, free apps, some beer, a social. But the people that I would think about would be, and this is a little bit off, the core, but you might think like, who are the people that I'm already working with that don't necessarily talk to one another, but our business and they could benefit from that interpersonal connection and communication, i.e., your banker, your insurance broker, your lawyer, your CPA, maybe some key vendors, people that want to be included in part of your story, but don't necessarily talk to each other. And I found that a lot in my own experiences. Like my CPA and my lawyer might talk to each other, but they're definitely not talking to my banker. And then the insurance person's off on their own. It's like you have this very fractured approach. But if you get those folks together, and again, with a reasonable agenda and what are your goals and how do we make this efficient? I think that could be a really interesting way to go. And Sean was echoing that as well. Is you don't necessarily need to pay these people. You're already paying them in many cases for the services that they're
Because they
promoting.
want to see you succeed. I mean, they're invested in you. They're probably in your community. If they can help you succeed, it benefits everyone involved.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah.
And I think, they can also learn from that experience. If they're operating in the beer space, say they're a lender, they're a lawyer, what they learn from interacting with you can potentially help them with other people in their world.
Yeah, it's a virtuous cycle because I found that a lot with particularly with our banker and even our insurance people, and frankly, anyone. It's like, when you're working with these folks, I think we kind of get pigeonholed like, well, they're only familiar with my specific situation and, they're focused on, maybe it's compliance, if it's a banker that I need to do these certain things. But the fact of the matter is that they are your partner and they're your advocate and they're working on your behalf. Sure, they're an independent business, got their own thing going on, but they are invested in your success. And as such, they're going to bring to bear the experience that they've had with uh, other companies, not even breweries, and say like, look, here are some things to look out for. So I think they can be a really valuable partner and advocate, advisor in that regard. But we just need to give them a forum to do so, and that's where this idea kind of came up.
So you get your board together, you get your panel together. What's the structure of these meetings and how often are they meeting? Someone setting an agenda? Like, what do you hope actually comes from having an advisory board?
Yeah, I think it's really important to think that thing through. Now I'll just kind of replay what Lawson was talking about was, they do quarterly meetings. I believe he said they're like 90-minute meetings. So that's to discuss kind of like the operations, strategic focus, financial snapshot. What are the challenges and opportunities? And then importantly, what are the commitments and next steps? Because I think that's what we want to move this
Yeah.
thing forward. And I think one of the fundamental problems with meetings is that there's kind of a lack of commitment and next steps. Like, well, what are we going to do with this? A lot of times it's like you have the meeting, you go down rabbit holes, blah, blah, blah. You leave and you're like, what did we just talk about for the last 90 minutes? Like,
Yeah.
what happened? So it's really important to have commitments and next steps at the conclusion. And that's really where the accountability and I think the magic of these comes in is like, we're going to meet next quarter. These are the commitments and next steps. We're going to talk about that in 90 days. So you've got that accountability that you got to kind of roll into. Now, the other thing is so that's that. I think you have a very specific and structured approach to this and agenda. The other thing it can be topic specific. So if you've got hey, we are thinking of expanding into new markets. We are thinking of doing X, Y, or Z. And here's kind of the proposal we've got, and we really want to get everybody's feedback. So you can do a specific thing like that as well, as opposed to more broadly, here's how our business is doing, and here are the key challenges that we have.
That's so interesting. I think there's so much value in these. So let's kind of big picture it. Like, what's the real goal of having these advisory boards, and what benefits is a taproom manager or owner actually going to see?
Yeah. I'll come back to accountability. I mean, I think it's increased accountability. You're reporting to a group what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. I think it's getting different perspectives, skill sets, experiences, a fresh set of eyes, objectivity. I mean, I think a lot of times we are just too close to the problem to see what's really going on. And you and I talked about this in a recent podcast, is we get stuck in a rut and it's hard to get out of that rut. And we need some triggering mechanisms. And, we talked about some ways to do that. But, another way to do it is to have an advisory panel that can really come in and they don't have a horse in the race, right? They're just I've used this line before. I had a coach who used to tell me, "Hey, I have one objective. I'm only interested in your greatness." And I was like, that is so awesome. So if you had a panel of people, of experts that are only interested in the greatness of your business, I think you're doing pretty good. So I think that's the real benefit of it is having that group on your side.
Okay, let's give everybody an action item. If they hear this, they like the concept, what should they do as soon as they get to their tap room or brewery later today?
I think I would list out who are your advisors now, formal, informal, people that come in that like, boy, that person always has really good thoughts for me. How might I include them in something like this? Do I have a banker, lawyer, CPA, insurance person that from time to time has helped me out? Just make a list because they're out there now anyway. But I think you know, a lot of this is really just about focus. Like, how do we focus and organize and streamline the team that we already have that's kind of disparate and out there and, very ad hoc. Oh, I'll call that person when this happens or that person, but do it in a more sort of proactive and organized way, and laser focused on the strategy and then the tactical sides of your business. So that's what I would do is just make a list and then say, all right, could this be a thing? And it doesn't have to be forever. I mean, maybe you do a pilot, like, all right, we're going to try this. Um, we're going to see how it goes. We're going to have our agenda and we're going to have, a test run on it. That's something to think
I
about.
love it, everybody. Give it a shot. And if you want a quote unquote advisory board of some peers from around the country, that's why Taproom Success is here. You know when you have to make that transition at the very end, because we'd love to have you
Yeah.
join us. Plenty of great conversations. We can learn from each other, people with different perspectives. Everybody, it's easy. Join taproomsuccess.com to connect with others like you. I think it's never been more important. Carrie, always enjoy our conversations together. Excited to see you face to face before too long. And thanks for all the great insight today.
Thanks, Andrew. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
See you soon.